What's up, everybody? My name is Big Cam and welcome back to another Comically Boston breakdown episode. It's been a while since we did one of these, and it's certainly been a while since we did a Game of Thrones spin-off show. And the last time we did one of these for House of the Dragon Season 2 was what, 2023? Or maybe sometime last year? But it looks like House of the Dragon Season 3 will be coming out later this summer, so make sure you guys stay tuned if you guys want to see some coverage on House of the Dragon, or if you guys want to go back and check out some of my House of the Dragon Season 2 and Season 1 breakdown videos, that would be much appreciated. But today, we are talking about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, their newest Game of Thrones spin-off show, and this time it's going to be following our main characters Duncan and Egg, who we will learn much more about in this series, because this one's going to be a much more contained, smaller scale type of show than the sprawling House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones where we're all over Westeros. I believe the entirety of the show is going to take place at Ashford Meadow at this one tournament, and I think I'm really interested in this so far, and I'm loving it. You know, like after one, and you know, to be honest with you, not a whole lot happens in this episode, and I'm still so intrigued by everything going on. Maybe it's because I'm a big fella myself, and Duncan the Tall is you know, maybe I'm sinking in with the tallness and just being a big fella, and just maybe I understand Dunk to his core already, just from being a big fuck and trying to like not be a big fuck. But so just the timeline for this show, 89 years before Game of Thrones. So this Knight of the Seven Kingdom is set between Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, where House of the Dragon is obviously set way ahead of time. So we're talking 78 years after House of the Dragon. So, you know, almost 80 years after whatever the final thing we'll see from House of the Dragon will be. That's when A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms kicks off. And then much later, after A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, about 90 years later, is when the events of Game of Thrones starts. So we're in that sweet spot, about 100 years in between both things, and give or take. But we open this show on 3 wet nags in the pouring rain. A white, brown, and black horse, sad and wet. But we see the Dunk actor, Peter Coughley, getting some wet bonus pay. And if you guys don't know actors, if you ever see an actor visibly dripping wet on screen, they got a bonus for that scene called the wet bonus. I just thought that was an interesting little detail, and as soon as I saw it, I go, oh, episode 1 getting that wet bonus, here we go. Good for him. But the show opens as our boy Dunk buries his lord, his knight, Sir Arlen of Pennytree, as he has passed away. And Dunk has been a squire for this knight since he was a boy, and he buries him. And we see Dunk speak over his body as he like kneels there in the rain, and he's like, I don't know the words, you know, like, and he's like, you never beat me when I didn't deserve it, except that one time, and we cut to flashbacks of him getting beatings, and then he's like, that one time though, I didn't deserve that beating, it was the inn boy that ate the woman's pie, not me, but you beat me anyways, you didn't believe me. But he also says that he will take care of the horses for Sir Arlen of Pennytree, and I believe the horses' names are Sweetfoot, Chestnut, and Thunder, and I believe Thunder is the war horse, and then I think what the other 2 horses were probably just Sir Arlen's horse and Dunk's horse, I'm guessing. But you need that one war horse for, you know, whether it's jousting or battle, you know, you need a battle horse ready to go at any moment, right? The next morning, Dunk wakes up and it's now sunny, stopped raining, and he's trying to figure out what to do next with his life, because now he's lost. He used to just do anything that his knight, you know, his lord, told him to do. So now he's in charge of what he's to do, and he's talking to the horses, and he's saying he could join the Night's Watch in King's Landing. And he's like, stop raping, sir. Which I was just like, Doug, that's your King's Watch voice, sir? Come on, man. But now I'm like, is Dunk going to eventually become a City Watch guy? I mean, we know from Game of Thrones, Sir Duncan the Tall had 4 pages of accolades for being a knight. So we're seeing the day one of him being a knight. You know what I mean? Like, where he's just learning the ropes. He's very green at this point. So I believe over the course of the show, we're going to see all of the great accomplishments that Duncan the Tall ends up getting written in that book many, many years later. You know what I mean? So as he's saying he could join the City Watch in King's Landing, he's like wielding his, knight's sword that is now his. And he's like, it fits my grip as well as it ever fit his. And he says there's a tourney in Ashford Meadow. And then like the dramatic Game of Thrones, the oh, that amazing Game of Thrones theme song starts to kick in, and as we're about to think that it's about to cut to the intro and we're about to get that great theme song, it doesn't cut to the intro, and it instead cuts to Dunk standing behind a tree shitting water, because it is not a solid turd. It is a very watery, terrible shit. I don't know what this guy's diet's like, but it was not a good poo. But it's also shitting in the face of any of the Game of Thrones fans that was like, oh, you want that old style Game of Thrones? That's not what this is. We are not doing the same old intro. We're not doing any of that. So I was like, that could probably piss off some people, but I thought it was very funny that I was like, because I was jamming, I was like, I was like, wait, what? Like, what happened? So after Dunk shits all over the Game of Thrones intro, our boy Dunk seems to be not very classy, and they call him a hedge knight, which is the title of this first episode. And that's because these type of knights, although Dunk seems to be an honorable type of guy, he is very, very poor, and he tends to sleep under hedges or trees, and clearly shits outside. So he's not a highborn, he's not a lord, he's a hedge knight, where he doesn't necessarily have loyalties to any army. He's kind of like a sword for hire type of thing, but he's very, very poor, so he doesn't do this a lot, and he's fought in battles and stuff, I guess, but he's not like a part of a house, at any moment that house says you have to fight, it's not like that. I think it's more like, hey, will you fight for us? We'll give you this coin. And he's like, sure, that's what hedge knights feel like to me more often. But it also, I think in the books, hedge knights are sometimes turned to like being thieves because of how poor they are, and they have to steal food or money to get food, you know what I mean? So yeah, our boy is clearly poor and clearly not a highborn, and shits outside. But he also sleeps underneath this tree. So the same tree that he was sleeping under, he's now shitting under? So what, is he like just laying in his own shit? Or is he just like, it's okay, the porta potty's on the other side of the tree, this side's my bed? Like, oh, gross. But our boy Dunk starts to ride away, and as he's riding away on the white horse, he looks back at the tree and the grave of Sir Arlen, and then he takes off to go to the tournament in Ashford Meadow, and as he's pulling away, he's riding the white horse, pulling the other two behind him, as the intro for this series, like a very slow, almost solemn medley plays as his intro, and we see the title card, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, is just a classy, simple title card, not the over-the-top, extravagant title cards of Game of Thrones and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And honestly, it fits a lot more for Duncan, and Duncan the Tall, and this is his show. He's not a king or a queen. He's not even a real knight. He's a hedge knight, so he's very poor. So why isn't his intro just title letters over the screen, you know what I mean? As he walks away and we see a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms in the tree that he just took a shit behind as he walks away through this great landscape. I mean, some of the shots in this episode, beautifully shot. We then see him ride up to an inn, and he sees a stable boy, who is our other main character of this series, a character called Egg, and we'll find out more about him, but we see already that this boy is smart-mouthed and needs a good clout in the ear. I think that just means either like a pinch or like just a smack upside the head. Dunk goes into the inn, and the bartender asks him if he would like duck or lamb, and he says both, and she kind of Well, you're big enough for it, all right. And this place is pretty much abandoned because everybody has gone to the tournament. So nobody's really in there except for one drunk. And this drunk in the bar says, "I dreamed of you. Stay the fuck away from me." And goes upstairs, leaving a Targaryen coin behind. And she's like, "Don't worry about that, drunk mister." But for some reason, this Targaryen, I was like, who the hell is that? So that's got to be some Targaryen prince that's up to no good. But he also seems to be a dreamer, and he kind of reminded me of Littlefoot from House of the Dragon. You know, just the look of him and like how he was kind of limping. So I don't know, maybe that's a Littlefoot descendant Targaryen? I don't know, but he seemed very drunk and very hostile towards Dunk, and Dunk's like, "I don't even know who the fuck you are, bro. What are you hostile towards me? You dreamed of me? You never met me." Like, but that's how legendary Dunk is. He's in dreams. Dunk then goes back to the barn to check on the horses to see how they're doing, and finds Egg wearing his armor sitting on top of one of the horses, and he's like, "What are you doing? Get the fuck off there." And Egg asks him to come to the tourney with him and be his squire, saying all knights need squires. And Dunk doesn't take him and says, "You're better off not squiring for the likes of me, kid." And Dunk goes off on his journey by himself with his holster made out of rope, holding up his scabbard and a shield on his back, and his master's shield, and I think it's like a chalice with like wings on it. It's, you know, very old school armor, but like even just seeing this, I was like, I need a green cloak, I need a sword with a rope, and I need a scabbard, and I need a shield, and I got my Dunk cosplay down pat. Let's go. Dunk then arrives at Ashford Meadow, and he goes to see the Master of Games to see if he can be a knight in this tournament. And Dunk smokes his head off the door frame on the way in, which made me die laughing. But then he tells the man that he is Sir Dunk, and he was a squire for Sir Arland of Pennytree since he was a boy, and Sir Arland knighted him before he died. And the Master of Games questions if he's a real knight. He's never heard of Sir Arland. So now we see flashbacks of young Dunk asking Sir Arland if he was meant to be a knight like him one day, and Sir Arland just kind of looked at him and just spit out a chunk of fruit that he was eating and just kind of didn't answer him. So I was like, is Dunk a real knight or not? I don't know. They didn't necessarily make it fully clear that what he's saying is the truth, you know what I mean? But Dunk says, when Sir Arland was dying, he called for his long sword and bade me kneel. He charged me to be a good knight, to defend the weak and the innocent, serve the realm with all my might, and I swore that I would. And I loved the delivery of this line. And, you know, as he's saying it, it sounds like it's maybe true, but it also sounds like something maybe Dunk has been rehearsing. You know what I mean? Like, maybe this isn't true, and maybe Dunk's just trying to become a knight, but, you know, isn't a real one. I don't know. But who's to say if Dunk is a real knight or not? We never really have seen the scene of Sir Arland knighting him. You know, we just saw him burying him. So, I don't know. I mean, why go to all this effort if he's not actually knighted, you know? But who's to say if he actually is or not? He might have been knighted by Sir Arland's deathbed, but he might not have been. But the Master of Games hawks a big-ass loogie into a cup and then says, "Any knight can make a knight, aye, that's true, but were there any witnesses to your dubbing of being a knight?" And Dunk says, "Only a robin in a thorn tree." And the Master of Games kind of gets angry with him and accuses Dunk of lying about being a knight and says, "You know what we do to folk like you, lying about sacred oaths? We strip you naked in front of the whole town, and we lower you down our arsehole first on a spike, and we fuck you dry. It's called the Ashford chair." And he's just kind of like, oh, and like, what a descriptive, visual description of words. Like, oh, I can't not have that image of the Ashford chair in my head now if I wanted to. Talk about top 10 ways I would not like to die. The Ashford chair is one of them. But the guy, the Master of Games, is just busting Dunk's balls. He's like, "What? Were you kicked in the head? What, do you think we got a bunch of people piling in here trying to enter tournaments?" He goes, "But you will have to find somebody to vouch for Dunk that his Sir Arland of Pennytree was a real guy, you know, so he's going to have to find somebody that knew him to vouch, you know, that his knighthood is real. And Dunk says, I noticed somebody's house flag from House Dondarrion, and he says that he and Sir Arland served for them a few years back and that they would remember him. House Dondarrion, though, that name might sound familiar for you, which it must be the same house of Beric Dondarrion from Game of Thrones, which was I don't know if I said that first name correct, but Dondarrion was a character, I believe, the flaming sword guy from season whatever of Game of Thrones, and one of the best characters. But so Dunk is off to now find somebody to vouch for him, and find someone that knows Sir Arland of Pennytree to vouch for his knighthood. So Dunk goes to leave and hits his head on the door frame again, and it cuts away as he's about to say, 7 fucking hells! You know, like it cuts away real quick. I was like, man, the editing in this show is really good. Like, editing it in a way where it makes it funnier, you know what I mean? Like, cutting away from the intro song to shit, you know? Like, whoever's doing this knew what they were doing. Dunk then goes to find the man to vouch for him, and there's women outside of this guy's tent. And she's like, oh, you must be a Hedge knight, just like a regular knight, but sadder. And then they tell him to come back later because the guy's napping, and he's like, all right, and he goes to leave, and he like walks the wrong way at first, embarrasses himself, and then he's walking away, and he's talking to the horses, and he's just being Dunk himself, but he clearly, day one of being a knight is not going as well as he might have thought it would have. But Dunk almost then gets into a fight for gawking at a knight who's fighting his squire, who's also his cousin, and then the knight's like, who the fuck are you? You want to go? Step in the ring, fight me. And he's like a little guy, you know, peacock, and looking at Dunk like, we want to fight? And Dunk's like, oh, I got other things to attend to. And he goes, oh, matters of the hedge, no doubt. You know, and they all laugh because they're all like real sellswords and real knights from houses, you know, Lannisters and whatnot. And he's just Sir Dunk the Tall, you know, where, I mean, who's some of the guys we knew, like Sir, of course I'm blanking on all the names, but there was like a knight, Sir whatever from the Vale, you know, and they're like Sir whatever, Sir Jaime Lannister of House Lannister, you know, like the Golden Hand, whatever his nicknames were, King Killer, King Slayer, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's always some name for a knight, and they're normally, you know, a City Watch guy or something. They're not normally this guy from the Hedge. But so Dunk almost gets in a fight with this guy who's being a real prick, honestly. But he looks at the horses and he's like, maybe we should camp somewhere quieter. And instead of finding somewhere to sleep in the tents in the tournament little area, he goes outside of the town and he like finds his own little spot to camp by a tree and by a river. And because the Master of Games told him that he smelled earlier, he washes himself in the river and bathes himself, smells his clothes. He's like, oh, still stinky. He's like slapping them up against a rock to clean them. I was like, Jesus Christ, Dunk, what are you up to? But Dunk then goes back and makes friends with the ladies at the Dondarrion tent, and he's still sleeping, but he's talking to them. He's like, I really need them. You know, I have to get into this tournament. And they're like, why? So you can put your body on the line to entertain people? And they're like, it's not worth it, one whore to another. And they like kind of giggle, and he's like, must you mock me? All I was asking for was a little bit of help. And he goes to leave, and they're like, sorry, lad, we see a lot of green knights. If we could give you any advice, take care of your body. It's the only one you're likely to get. And Dunk's like, I guess so, you know, and then he leaves. And Dunk finds a drink walking around in a crowd, and then he sees a crowded tent, and he's like, what's going on over there? And he goes to see that they're putting on some type of stage play, and it's a gorgeous woman on play talking, and he like notices the gorgeous woman, and there's a fake fire-breathing dragon who's breathing fire right there, and this is about as many dragons we're going to get in this show, so if that's what you were hoping for out of this show, was dragons, maybe you got the wrong show, and I'll see you back in the summer for House of the Dragon Season 3. But even so, just like this little scene here, I'm really liking this so far. It's like a very poor but kind, very green knight is at this tournament, and it looks like maybe he's gonna have some type of love interest with this woman at this play here. I'm totally here for it. It also looks to be like the funniest of the 3 shows so far, but it also seems to be the smallest show because it's set in like one little area, and instead of like looking at Westeros through the eyes of kings and queens, we're looking at it through this very poor knight who's almost just like one of us, one of the people, you know what I mean? But Dunk leaves this little play, making eye contact with the girl, and he's kind of doing triple takes as he walks out. And he leaves, but he sees that squire that he saw earlier that was getting beat up by his cousin, and the squire calls him Half-Man, which is much like Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones getting called a half-man for being a dwarf and being half the size of a normal man. But in this case, he calls him Half-Man. He goes, "Do I look like a half-man to you?" "Yes, half-man, half-giant, you know." He's like, all right, well, I guess it makes sense. But the squire asks Dunk if he's hungry, and Dunk says, "Always." So the squire brings Dunk to the Baratheon tent, and you can tell because there's antlers and stag heads all over the place. And he walks in, and they're having a feast, and there's other knights drinking and eating and having a good time. And Dunk sees Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Knight, and he sees him from across the room, and he goes, "I thought he'd be taller," you know. So Dunk, you know, is sitting there, and then all of a sudden the Laughing Knight starts giving a drunken speech about 4,000 years ago someone came up with the idea for the first tournament. Whose idea was it? And nobody's got an answer, and then he just throws coins out at the table. He's like, the first one to kill me gets these coins. You know, so clearly this guy's rich and, you know, very flamboyant and wants to be known by all, and he's the Laughing Knight because he laughs on back of horseback as he kills you. I don't know. But he's definitely smaller than Sir Duncan the Tall. But Dunk is feasting at this party when the Laughing Knight notices him from across the room and calls him over. And he gets called up to this table, and they ask him about being a big man and if he gets punched in the face a lot. And he goes, "Bigger men get punched more than little men." And as my experience as a bigger guy, that is 100% true. Go to a jiu-jitsu class and all the small people are like, "Oh, cool, a big guy I can just, you know, use my full strength on and just beat up." And like even the other big guys see the big guy and they're like, "Oh, cool, I don't have to go half strength like I do with the small people. I can use all of my muscle against this guy." And you just end up getting beatings for no reason other than the fact that you're a big fuck, really. And if you're wondering the questioning of my validity of being big fuck, in high school I was an offensive lineman. I was about 6'2", 380 fucking pounds at my biggest. Now I'm not currently 300 pounds, thank God. I'm probably somewhere like 270, 265, something like that, which is still a little overweight for me, but I'm a big fuck, so, you know, I'm never gonna be small Cam, so big Cam it is. But Sir Lionel here asks Dunk, why does he slouch? You've been slouching, you know, trying to hide yourself in this room all night. And he goes, "Oh, when you're as big as me, you try to go unnoticed, sir." And he goes, "The 7 above gave you height and made you tall. So be tall." And so this is probably where the inspiration comes for Sir Duncan the Tall to be Sir Duncan the Tall and not just Sir Dunk. But Sir Lionel asks, "What have you brought for my favor?" as he's sitting in his tent. He goes, "Oh shit, I didn't know I was supposed to bring something. I have nothing." And Lionel asks him, "Then why the fuck are you in my tent?" And he's like, "If you're not here to, you know, get my favor, then you must be here to kill me." He goes, No. "Then why are you in my fucking tent?" And Dunk says, "Supper?" As he holds up like a little donut or something. And he's like, oh, well, makes sense actually. "Do you like dancing?" And Dunk's like, "Who doesn't?" So then they start dancing and getting very drunk together. And we see this funny ass scene of them dancing, and it's actually beautifully lit too. The entire thing's lit by like candle lights and very few actual like studio lights. It's like mostly lit in darkness by these candles, and it like has this like glowing yellow light to it and looks great. I was very happy with how the show looked so far. But you know, so they dance and they get drunk together, and then Sir Dunk and Sir Lionel are sitting at the head table talking, and Dunk's got Lionel's Baratheon's antlers on it, his like antler crown on his head, and Lionel says, "Within every man there are many men, and if they had done it, I could too." And Dunk asks, what chances does he have in this tournament, truly? And the Laughing Knight says, oh, you have no chance. But it's a great honor to test oneself against a worthy foe. And, you know, that's not necessarily what Dunk wants to hear. He's like, God. He goes, what do I do? And he goes, I don't know, but I'm very drunk. You know, and then he walks away. But I love these two getting hammered and becoming boys and like having this heart-to-heart. But then Lionel walks off, too drunk to continue. And Dunk sees Sir Manfred Dondarrion, who he was supposed to be trying to see and getting his vouch, you know, so he can be in this tournament. And he goes to talk to him, and this guy, you know, is too busy with these women. He's like, I don't remember you, and, you know, you're going to have to find someone else that knew your Sir Arland to vouch for his knighthood. So that's going to be like a thing that he's going to be dealing with in these early episodes, is trying to find a knight at this tournament who knows of Sir Arland and Dunk. But Dunk, you know, tired after this long night, goes back to his camp by the river and finds Egg sitting there cooking a fish by the fire. And Egg's like, I'm not going back. What do you mean? No, I'm staying. And Egg's clearly very smart kid, because he's cleaned for Dunk, cleaned his clothes, caught a fish, cooking the fish, he's groomed the horses, and he says he would have put up the pavilion too, but Dunk, he couldn't find it. And Dunk's like, there's my pavilion. And he's like, that's a tree? Trees leak? And he goes, so they do. So maybe Dunk will eventually get a pavilion and Egg will be his squire, but I really like the two of them together, you know, it seems like they're gonna be good together. But Dunk's like, I don't need a pavilion, I sleep under the tree, or I won't be in a smoky tent, I would rather look at the stars, you know. And so clearly Dunk is very okay with sleeping outside, but Egg is also clearly high-born, well-trained, knowledgeable, and he says he's from King's Landing and not from Flea Bottom. So if he's from King's Landing and not from the poor side of things, there's only really one place he could be from, right? And that's the Red Keep, right? Right? I haven't watched Game of Thrones in a while. I think that's what the big castle's called at King's Landing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Egg is then sitting there, and what is your name? And he goes, Dunk, Sir Dunk. And he goes, that's terrible. And so Dunk then stands up, you know, broads his shoulders back, and he's like, you know, not slouching anymore. And he goes, Sir Duncan the Tall. And Egg's like, never heard of him. And he goes, oh, so you've heard of every knight in the Seven Kingdoms then? And he goes, the good ones. So Egg has probably read that book, right? And he goes, you got a name, thief? And he goes, Egg. And I believe he also says something after this, but I didn't catch it. But I believe this Egg is the same Egg that Maester Aemond from Game of Thrones, the very, very old man at the wall where Jon Snow meets him, and he passes away in Game of Thrones, and as he's passing away, he goes, Egg, I had a dream that I was old. So maybe Maester Aemond was a Targaryen as well, and he was a dreamer, and he was the one that gave Egg his name of Egg. And it's probably Aegon, but he calls him Egg. And who else is named Aegon? Jon Snow is an Aegon Targaryen, is he not? But Dunk, you know, has, you know, heart-to-heart to him and has had a tough first day as being a knight. So he says he will allow Egg to be his squire if he listens to everything that he says, does what he's told, and he won't beat him unless he deserves it. And he goes, you look small, so you'll have food in your belly. The clothes that I can get you won't be fancy, but you'll have clothes on your back, food in your belly, a place to sleep, you know, you'll be cared for, trained, you know, like he'll take care of him so he won't get hurt, you know. So it seems like Egg and Dunk, and Dunk is a very nice guy in the same way that Sir Arlan of Pennytree took Duncan as a boy and raised him to be a knight just like him and to be his squire. It seems like Egg is going to be Dunk's squire, but also kind of this like father figure role as well. But this seems more like maybe older brother, younger brother type of role. But as Dunk's saying this to Egg, Egg's looking at him like, wow, nobody's cared about me this much ever. And Egg's like, yes, my lord. And Dunk's like, no, don't call me lord. Sir's fine. I'm only a hedge knight. But I was like, oh, Dunk's gonna take care of this kid. Or maybe they'll take care of each other, because Egg seems like a smart kid. So maybe Egg will be taking care of Dunk a little bit more than Dunk's taking care of Egg. You know what I mean? But they go to sleep under the stars and they see a shooting star. And Egg says those who see a falling star get good luck. So hopefully this will mean good luck for our man Dunk in his tournament. As they go to sleep, credits roll on episode 1. So I am totally already in love with our boys Dunk and Egg. The simple nature of this show, the small one setting at this tournament. We're not going to be traveling all over. We're not going to be at King's Landing. We're not going to see the wall. We're just going to be here at this tournament and with these characters, and we're going to be going from tents to the battlefield, back to the tents, to the river, to their campsite. You know, like, I like the little locations within the location, but I love this already, you know, and some of the visuals in this show looked beautiful, you know, the landscape stuff, you know, him walking with the horses on the wide shots, and then like him, you know, over this like village of tents that they really built for real, and they used so much of I saw like the behind the scenes, they used so much in camera in this show, it's amazing, you know, very, very little visual effects, if any at all. And I love that, like, we're just going to be getting to know who Sir Duncan the Tall is and who Egg is, and if he will survive this experience and how he will experience this, and, you know, hopefully he survives this tourney, and I'm sure he will, because we know Season 2 and Season 3 have already been greenlit, and I believe A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is 3 short little novellas that they're kind of grouping into one. So I believe the first one, the Hedge Knight, will be this whole first season, and then maybe the second book will be Season 2, and then the third book will be Season 3. But apparently George R.R. Martin has already given them a bunch of Duncan and Egg stories going forward, so that they know where the characters go in the future as well, so they won't get to like Season 3 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and be waiting for George to write more books the same way kind of Game of Thrones did, and why that Game of Thrones ending ended up so poorly, because they adapted their own thing and the book wasn't out, so they had to do their own thing, you know, and George R.R. Martin hasn't put out the next book because of how poorly Game of Thrones ended, you know, so hopefully this one seems to be adapting his books much more closely, and he seems to be very happy with it, so that's at least nice that the author of this world isn't disrespected like he feels on House of the Dragon in Game of Thrones. And House of the Dragon started out good, but apparently that relationship with Ryan Condal has completely, you know, been abysmal. So, you know, poor George, you know, maybe it's George, maybe it's the people at HBO, who knows. But, yeah, and then for like the teaser for the weeks ahead, it looks like there's going to be, you know, maybe the little crush that Dunk has, maybe that girl is going to he's gonna rush over to like defend the girl because he's getting hurt by like a Targaryen prince or something, and Dunk runs up and strikes the Targaryen prince. So this will end up in Dunk being in a trial by combat for his life, and it looks like he will be taking quite a beating, but he won't just stay down. So maybe that's how Dunk wins, where he's not necessarily a good knight, he's just too stubborn to quit. And honestly, I respect it. But questions I have from the end of this first episode: is Dunk really a knight? I mean, I suppose, or why would he go through so much trouble to find someone who knew Sir Arlen to justify his knighthood? But we also haven't seen the flashback of him actually getting knighted before this guy's death. So is he a real knight, or does he just want to be a knight? That's an interesting question. And will he find somebody that knows Sir Arlen? Who knows? But also, who is Egg really? Is he a Targaryen? I believe so, but where is he from? Why did he run away? You know, interesting questions behind this character too, and hopefully these two will stick together for many moons to come, and I really like the two of them together. The humor in the show seems great. I'm really here for it, y'all. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this show down in the comment section below, or you can message me on my other social medias. Links for those down in the description below. Big Cam, 2 G's in the Big, pretty much anywhere. Just find my face and you can message me, and I would love to chat more A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms with you. And if you made it this far and you would like to support the channel, the best way of doing that is dropping a like on this video, commenting down below, subscribing if you haven't already, and hitting that bell so you don't miss future A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms breakdown videos, and you'll get the notifications when those come out. Once again, my name's Big Cam, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next video. Peace!